In this video, I'll share an approach which makes the process of learning data science actually very easy. If you have spent any time learning data science, you would know that data science is a very vast field where you have to cover a lot of topics, including programming, SQL, statistics, probability, and much more. And for most people, this becomes a very difficult task. Since I've been a data science student myself for over 10 years, having learned data science from books, courses, tutorials, and most importantly, working on some real-life projects at companies like Meta, Cisco, Wells Fargo, I wanted to share my thoughts based on my years of experience. What's the easiest path to learn data science? But before I go to that, I wanted to share a little bit of my story of how I tried to learn data science, what are the mistakes I made, and then hopefully it will make much more sense to you when I share what I think is the easiest path to learn data science. I did my bachelor's in telecommunication engineering, having learned almost nothing related to data science. I had learned a little bit of programming, and based on that and a little bit of my own learning, I started my career as a software engineer. And later on, when I wanted to switch to data science, I took some courses in the master's related to data science and also learned from some courses, tutorials, etc. And with that knowledge, I was able to get my initial job as a junior data scientist. But I knew that my knowledge of data science, it was very basic, and if I have to be successful in this career, then I have to learn a lot more. So with that in mind, I started thinking that how I can learn more of data science so that I become very good in this field. And the initial approach which I decided on, I called that as top-down approach of learning. And the basic idea behind top-down approach of learning is that you try to understand that what is needed for most day-to-day tasks, and based on that, I started developing my expertise around it. 10 years ago, we didn't had a lot of fancy ML tools as we have today, and most of the development around data science and ML was done using pandas and scikit-learn. So I thought if I could become really good using these two libraries, then I can consider myself a very successful and a very knowledgeable data scientist. So with that in mind, I went to Pandas website and also scikit-learn website, and I printed all of their documentation. It became these hefty, almost a big book size prints. And then I started going through them, trying to make a sense of it. For pandas, it did work because pandas is sort of like SQL, and most of the commands the documentation had were mainly around how you can query and transform the data. But when I started learning scikit-learn using this method, I very soon realized this approach won't work. And the main reason was that when I started going through the pages of scikit-learn documentation, they were mentioning a lot of mathematics and the foundations of machine learning, which I did not had a lot of knowledge around. So with that foundation missing, I realized that I just cannot go through scikit-learn documentation and fully understand it. So my initial thought of starting from top and going towards bottom didn't actually work. Then I thought, okay, if the top-down approach is not working, then let me try the bottom-up approach. So for that, I started going towards what is the foundations of machine learning, and I started going through statistics books, linear algebra books, calculus books, and having spent 3-4 months into it, learning a lot of concepts around calculus and linear algebra and statistics and probability, I realized I was trying to do some very complex integration calculation. And how does that help in any way me becoming a better data scientist? Because those complex calculations had no relationship in what I was trying to do on a day-to-day basis on my data science job. So I abandoned that approach as well and realized that this bottom-up approach, unless you have a very clearly defined path on how much deep you want to go, also is not a very feasible one, because there is a lot of dependencies between probability and statistics and machine learning and linear algebra, etc. And when you try to learn everything, it becomes a never-ending project. So having failed at both the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach, then I spoke with a lot of senior mentors and tried to see what is the most optimal way to learn data science. And this is the approach I'm going to share with you in this video. The basic premise of this approach is similar to the top-down method, which is that you start with the end in mind, and we lay out what is needed to A, have enough knowledge that you can crack most data science interviews, and B, have enough knowledge that you can succeed in your job as a data scientist once you crack the interviews. So coming to the first one, how can you have enough knowledge that you can crack most of the interviews? If you look closely at most of the data science interviews, They are around basic knowledge of programming, basic knowledge of SQL. You should have a fundamental understanding of probability and statistics, and you should have an intuitive understanding of 10 to 15 most frequently used machine learning algorithms like decision trees, linear regression, etc. And nowadays, since companies are asking for Gen AI, you should have some basic understanding around prompt engineering, what is the basic mechanism around transformers, attention mechanism, etc., and some understanding about the embeddings of these large language models. And the good thing is that with a curated learning path, learning these concepts at a depth that you can answer at least 90 to 95% of the interview questions, it's not hard. You have to develop enough expertise in Python that you can solve an easy lead code question. You should know enough Python that you can write some basic functions. You have basic understanding of Python, frequently used libraries like Pandas, scikit-learn, which I previously mentioned, and now Keras, TensorFlow, or PyTorch, any of these. Ideally PyTorch. And then nowadays, some understanding of how LangChain works. And that is pretty much you need for Python. For SQL, you should have a good understanding of 10 to 15 most frequently used SQL commands. For statistics and probability, if you just cover the topics given in the book, Practical Statistics for Data Scientists, I think this is enough for you to be able to answer 90 to 95% of the questions which are asked in data science interviews. And then for Gen AI, if you have watched some videos around how does the transformers work, what is the attention mechanism, and then how can you use LangChain to build RAG applications, that is pretty much all you need to crack most of the data science interviews. Now, if you're applying for contract roles, then you need to know a little bit of what are the tools they needed, because a lot of contract roles, they want you to be hands-on from day one. Whatever tools they're using, if you could prepare a little bit understanding of that, that will really help you for contract roles. And then if you're applying for FANG companies, then you have to go a little deep on your programming skills, because that is a very essential component of all ML roles there. I know it still isn't very easy, but with the focused preparation of 4 to 6 months, depending on what your starting point is, I think you should be in a very good position that you should be able to answer 90% plus questions in most of the interviews. There is a component of luck in all interviews, but preparation wise, I think you should be very close. And then when it comes to the point of how you can succeed in your day-to-day jobs, if you have the basic understanding of what I've covered to crack the interviews, and then you have dedication and good soft skills, which is mainly communication, then I have no doubt that with dedication plus good communication and the knowledge you have acquired to crack the interviews, there is no way that you will not do good in your day-to-day job. So the gist of the matter is that you have to be very thoughtful in terms of what learning path you use, so that you do not spend a lot of time trying to solve some complex calculus or linear regression or linear algebra problems which have no relevance to your day-to-day data science job. I've shared in the description the roadmap guide which I usually recommend to people in terms of what they should be learning and from where they should be learning it. The link is in the description. Also, I just created this video around what are the 4 books. If you read them from end to end, they cover most of these topics which I have briefly mentioned in this video. The link for that video is somewhere here. Please check it out. I'm pretty sure you'll like it and it will help you a lot in terms of getting ready for your data science interviews. Thank you so much for watching.